Good morning and welcome to Flat Out Recovery. Morning, boys.
Good morning.
Well, what's this about how we dress for the weather, Neil?
Well, I don't know, I was looking at young man running here. I don't know, I think it's the blood what runs through him, you know, as being such a young man.
What is it?
There's no blockage.
Warm-blooded or cold-blooded? I never know which one it is that I'm supposed to.
I assume you're warm-blooded.
Yeah, that's what I'm warm-blooded.
Yeah, as we know today, it's frozen out there, and when he's come along in his polo top and just looking like it's summertime, it's making me feel cold.
Look, but the thing is, Neil, what you got to remember is me and you are at a disadvantage. We're the wrong colour for a start.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that one,
Well,
bro.
you're more inclined towards warmer climes.
We are.
Yeah, cool.
But then Ronnie's kind of got heritage in him.
Yeah.
I'm more
Bangladeshi.
vampiric, I think.
Bangladeshi.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There you go, you see, something in common. Bangladeshi man in there.
Obviously, it's worn off on him, isn't it? It's just like,
Yeah, as I've got the
There's none of it left
Bangladeshi
in
warm blood, or whatever you, and I've got the Irish drink in me because I'm Irish as well. I've got the Scottish anger, and then whatever the English means.
Yeah, I assume it must be warm-blooded because you don't need anything else to warm you up. And you're just sitting there in a polo shirt.
Yeah. Just perfect. It's just right.
Is it just right?
Yeah.
I'm bemused as you are, Neil. I really am. It's freezing out there.
And I always have to remember, it's just come to me, like Ronnie wears shorts right up until...
We are aware of that, and
The
there is now documentation of that out to the world as it's been recorded. Ronnie talking about his shorts.
Yeah, I remember that, man. Like, I used to see him coming along in these shorts, and it's
I'm actually surprised to see him in jeans today.
I hate wearing jeans. It's just so uncomfortable and like this, that, and the other. And a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. I'm happy with that. Flip flops.
Well, is that your skiing outfit then? So when you go skiing, I just put my shorts on. Where are you going? Skiing.
Well, I tell you what, my trusty flip flops used to get me everywhere back in the day when I was on the Death March for a drink or something.
The thing is, when you're on the pop, you don't know what's on your feet. You could be wearing snowshoes in June. You wouldn't notice the difference, would you?
just on the death march, as Ronnie calls
The
it.
Death March, yeah. Will I make it to the shop? Will I make it to the dealer?
So when you throw that liquid down you must have, like, that was proper, like, heat coming out of you then.
Yeah.
You must have been sweating buckets.
It's it's crazy what that stuff can do to you.
The hooch.
Yeah, 3 hammers.
Oh
In the
God,
end.
no! Don't mention.
They told me Frosty Jacks was bad for you, so I switched to 3 hammers.
And that was obviously better for you, even though it's probably brewed in the same vat.
Yeah.
It's the same vat of chemicals.
The bottle was always green, wasn't it? But the side was not green.
I'm not sure I noticed what colour the bottles were.
But you know, just the name, 3 hammers. Like.
Get hammered 3 times at once.
White Lightning, and then there was
Oh,
Frosty Jacks.
Frosty Jack implies you're going to die of hypothermia from drinking it and staying outside. Anyway, how was our week, gents?
I've had a good week this week. I had to put some action in mine to get it. A bit of gratitude and a bit of... You can have your old life back if you want. It's free. A bit of gratitude, a bit of praying. And so I've had a really good week, a good turnaround, to be fair. Some good events. I've been busy as well at the same time, and I think it's to do with that as well, being busy. Because moving from a house of multiple occupants to a house of sole occupants is a massive change. I didn't even think realise the difference. You know, like that morning getting up and nothing gives you a lot of time to... The way I put it is that you get to iron out the big creases, but when you're in a house full of noise, the little creases get missed, but suddenly those little creases are visible when there's no one around.
Amplified.
To myself, yeah. And it's like, oh, actually, I've still got work to do here, and which I understand that recovery is a lifetime thing, and that's good, because if I'd learnt everything, it'd be boring then, wouldn't it? But yeah, the little nuts and crannies come out the woodwork, and you can see them, and you can think, gives you a wake-up call that you're still an addict, you're still an alcoholic, and you still have behaviours, and you still have all this kind of stuff going on in your head, but you haven't got the noise of a house full of people to block it out, or to vent your anger on. Realise what I was doing in my old house. You know, I was whinging about spoons and this and that and the other. That was my internal release from whatever was going on for me. So I'd be like, you this, you
Yeah,
you
I was
the
going
other.
to ask you about that. What's it like not having those petty day-to-day annoyances?
Well, it was those things that, you know, drown out the noise in my head.
Because on the one hand, yeah, I can see that it means that you don't necessarily focus on the me every day, and you can therefore project things onto them.
Yeah.
But having those other people there to just gripe about a bit is also almost part of a routine, isn't it?
Close, yeah, it's a routine.
This is how the morning goes. God, they've left the top off the milk again, or oh, they've left cornflakes on the floor, or oh, what have they done now with the washing? Or
why is this one still in bed? Why is that one not out of bed? Why is that one up so early? It's really
Whereas
looking
now,
at.
if there's cornflakes on the floor, you don't know when you can blame them. You're like, oh my God, was it me all the time?
unless you've got a ghost.
Yeah, no, it's alright, man. My place is alright.
What about do you get lonely at all? Or sometimes I think.
No, I don't get lonely, but I get. There's my wife again texting me on the phone. Not that I've got a wife.
You ain't got time to get lonely with the wife texting.
No, I don't get lonely because I'm alright for my own company, to be fair. But what I do get is I feel like I should be doing something, and what on earth am I sitting here for? Why am I sitting here? I should be doing something to improve, enhance, get better at, or something, or move forwards. And sometimes you just don't have to do that, do you? You don't have to be doing anything really if you don't want to.
I suppose you have nothing to compare to as well, because you haven't got those other people in the house. Because we make those comparisons subconsciously, don't we?
Yeah.
When we're living with other people.
We do. And you're right, actually. Yeah, you're right. You've got nothing to compare to.
Well, if you see somebody else not doing anything, you tend to think, well, if they're not doing anything, I'm just going to chill out myself, that kind of thing.
I think another thing as well, I realise that you access your subconscious more, and it's the subconscious is where most of the stuff lies, like your behaviours. Well, for me, this is what I believe. I'm not saying that it's right, but that's what I think. And your subconscious is where it all lies, where it all hides.
I think that's what you can compare it to, if that makes sense. So, like, you know, that stuff that you're kind of talking about, like, maybe I should be doing something with me. The way it kind of comes around is that, well, I want to be here, innit? I want to be here doing this, doing that, so I need to be doing something right now to be kind of getting to that place of doing that and doing this. So, sitting here right now, sometimes I'm all right with it, but I'm not all right with it because I should be doing something. Because if I'm
I feel like I'm missing out on something as well, and I'm thinking, what are they doing as well that they're not telling me?
some good thing, just by sitting here.
Are they up to something? And they're, you know, it's still them, isn't it? And it's like,
I think what I'm trying to say is that you get told to take your time. Like Ben with me, I'm kind of saying I can do this thing, but I've got no evidence that I can do it yet. So, for instance, now we've got this little thing where we're organising a little unity day, and I'm chairing these little Zoom meetings, and when you're seeing other people do it, I said I'll put myself up a chair because I can do that. Actually doing it now,
different story.
I'm not sure if I could do it. I don't know. I don't like doing this because all of a sudden, because you see people do it in a format and like they're kind of like, well, our agenda today, someone taking minutes, well, I'll take the minutes. Even taking the minutes. I don't know if I'm taking the minutes right.
You know what you do? You just do it the way you feel the best way it suits you. You're the chairman or whatever it is, so you've got to do it the way you do it, and you know you don't have to do it the way someone else does it, and no one's watching, really.
I'm watching.
You're watching.
Subconscious. That's what I'm trying to say. That's
Beat yourself
subconscious. That's it. And having that relationship with that subconscious in a way where you're just trying to get the balance around it. Because I'm saying it on the meeting. Kai has attended a few of the meetings, and I'm saying, yeah, if anyone kind of knows that if I'm doing this wrong, and I'm saying if you. Then I'm starting to really get conscious around the fact that I'm saying this a bit too much, and I don't want people to kind of realise that I don't know what I'm doing, but I have to own it at the same time. But
you're in that thing where really you should just let go and just go, right, this is how it is. I ain't done this before, so I'm learning as I go along. So if I make mistakes and you want to pick me up on it, fair play, do it. If not, let's get on with the show.
And I'm saying that, but what I'm saying to myself is something. So I'm voicing it, but I'm not believing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can't tell you because my head's all over the place at the minute. But it's not today. When he has me for a week. So.
What's it like coming home
Tomorrow,
now, as opposed to coming home when you were living with?
it's always different. Not sometimes. I love getting back. It's just nice to leave wherever I've been and go back to my own place. So in the evening more so it's nice. In the day so it can be different, but it's just a strange feeling. It's just like you walk through the door and you go, what? This is it. I'm not saying everyone will get that when they're going to independent living, or everyone gets it, but it's just really odd. I can't describe it, to be honest with you. For me, it was like, right, so nothing changes when you walk through the door. Nothing. Then that's what weird. Like everything, the way you've left it is still there. Nothing changes. What actually do you do in your home? What do people do in their own home? Cook.
Clean, sleep, watch a bit of TV.
Watch TV. Not a lot of things there, is there? Really?
It's quite repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very, very repetitive. It's like the same thing. I'll go in. I know where I'll sit on the sofa. I know what channels I'll put on the TV. I know that if I have I don't smoke anymore, but well, I try not to smoke, but and I can't smoke in there anyway. So I'm not saying I do smoke in there, but if I decide to go downstairs to have a vape, I go downstairs to have a vape. It seems very monotonous, very same thing.
A lot of our habits become automatic as well, don't they?
It's just it's like a machine. It's just like a machine is running. So it's like, now I check the Brita filter on my jug. It's flashing now, so that means it needs changing. But I don't always change it on the first day I see it flashing. I will change it the next day. And when I change that filter, what I will do is I'll run the water through it 3 times to make sure all the crap's out of it, and then I'll start using the filter. And I've got that kind of thing for everything that I do. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's almost like I don't need a soul to be able to do what I'm doing. If I could plug a battery in or something, this thing would just automatically just live.
Just be on pilot, automatic.
Just on autopilot. So the fridge, I know I put 2 sprouts in my smoothie along with 1 broccoli and 1 spinach and a bit of fruit. Just same. So not to say it's morbid and depressing, because I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back. Just noticing I'm just a little bit like, what do people do? What do people do? I mean, even if somebody's got a full-time job, for example, that's still monotonous, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, this life is pretty autopilot.
It goes back then, so I'm going backwards now from what you're just saying. It's life in general.
Yeah.
And then you start to question the meaning of life.
Well, that's a deep conversation. Yeah. I like what you said about the sofa. You might have a 3-seater sofa.
I've got 10 people could sit on my sofa. 10.
Yeah,
10.
but you always gravitate to that same spot.
That one spot.
Every time. I think it's just inbuilt in most people.
Yeah.
What do they say? We're creatures of habit, innit?
Creature of habit. And then this morning I had this thing. I noticed in this podcast, not all Ronnie speaking today, by the way, but this morning I had a realisation. You know, we're looking for life on other planets.
Are we?
Of course we are.
Oh no, Elon Musk isn't it?
No, but can I tell you, I've come to the realisation.
You're not going to Mars with Elon
I've
Musk.
come to the realisation.
I forbid you.
That we are so shallow-minded that there is life on virtually every planet out there.
Probably a lot more common sense
But
than there is down there.
we just think, because we can't see them on the surface, we think there's no life. But actually,
they all live underwater on
in
Mars.
caves. You'd think it's crazy, but we adapt to our surroundings. So in those planets, you can't live on the surface. There's someone burn you alive. So these things are living in underground cities.
Like avatars.
And if you think how from the ground upwards, we only take up half a mile with our buildings, don't we? So that's half a mile. And these crusts are like 40, 50, 60 miles deep, probably a lot more than that. So you could have layers and layers.
So it's kind of a bit like the clangers, but with lots of layers of them.
Well, you could have 1 layer, you could have 2 layers, you could have
Because
3
the
layers.
clangers used to sort of come
And
out.
they'll live underneath the crust of the earth. And they can do that because it's a little bit cooler, because not everyone's got the same ball of fire in the middle of the planet like we have. It's probably a smaller one. So
I mean, has it not occurred to you, Ronnie, that actually there is probably life on all these planets, and they've taken one look at us and thought, fuck that. We're not showing them anything. We're not going to show anything to suggest that we exist. We don't want to engage with them.
Listen, we was born right. It's not like someone gave us some big fat bag of tools to say, let's create this. We're just surviving, aren't we? We're just surviving the best we can, the whole of the world.
Obviously, the dinosaurs go there.
And then
ultimately we will. And it goes through, we've had the Ice Age, the Bronze Age, the Stone Age, all that. We'll be back at it again. We'll
of course,
be
it'll
back
be
in
something
caves.
different. Our souls will be something different. You know, we might be bats in the next life or something, or cave things or something. It's not to say the humans, like the soul dies. It just means that we become something different.
In which case, what happens to Chuck Norris?
Who's Chuck Norris?
You don't know Chuck Norris?
Chuck Norris can't die.
Chuck Norris looked the same for about 50 years, isn't it?
He
He
can't
looks exactly
die.
the same.
He's unstoppable.
It's made about
Someone
2
posted
million.
something about him on Facebook the other day. Your fondest memory of Chuck Norris is, well, you know, he could turn back time with a roundhouse kick.
He's still around, isn't he?
Yeah, and he has looked the same
He
for
has.
50 years.
Yes.
And
It's
that,
never changed.
and another thing to say, the dinosaurs was wiped out by
Comment.
one thing, right? So, out of all the billions,
Sure, it
of,
wasn't Chuck Norris. Who
how
got
can
them
we
out?
pinpoint out of all the billions of years that the planet's been around, say, yeah, they all died by one thing? What do we know?
Yeah,
What do we know?
it was a roundhouse kick. That's what did it.
Whoever this Chuck man sounds like a bit of
I'm
a geezer.
appalled that you don't know, Ronnie. I really
He had
am.
his chest hairs pulled out by Bruce Lee.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they've acted together, innit? They've been, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure acting is the right word, Neil. They kicked each other a few times.
They've been on film togetger.
In Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, that's it.
certainly.
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon.
Oh, there was some characters on Enter the Dragon. Come on, that was a movie. Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see the guys who made Airplane? They made a piss take of Enter the Dragon called The Fistful of Yen. And it's got this really bad dubbing that's deliberate. And the fights are all really, really crappy. It's really funny.
What's it called? Fistful of
A
Yen?
Fistful of Yen.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's part of a film called the Kentucky Fried Movie, which was their first thing that they made before they made Airplane.
Yeah, I don't know. Going back to all this kind of stuff, like recovering the world, recovering, and then I got to relate it back to what I'm doing here right now, innit? Recovery, and you talking about it all goes back into the planet.
It
Well-
just changes.
The planet needs a program.
There you
Planet needs a 12-step program.
go. Yeah, because putting all these things, what we put into the planet, as we know, is just polluting and destabilising it. Like,
Yeah, it will. We will wipe ourselves out. That's that's what will happen, and then the planet will be fresh again.
What, kind of like rebooting a computer?
Yeah.
Nature will press a button.
It
and
reset.
everything will reset.
And I think that's already happened anyway.
Whatever it may be, a prime thing for any of us as individuals is how we access what we do. And it makes it all the more pertinent to what we do here, because we don't even have a clear access to suggest to people anything other than charitable or private institutions, because that's basically all it is with rehab, isn't it? There isn't anything that's obviously all on NHS, because it's not really part of the service. If you think of what is offered on the NHS around alcohol and drugs, what is there? We're here for a charity.
Yeah,
Okay, so charities run as a business, but charities are run as businesses,
of course.
and you've got to be practical with something like rehab in that you've got to sustain staffing it. And if organisations like Changes didn't exist, who would be picking this up? Who would be doing it? Would it be like it was in America in the 30s, where you just had the rooms, or they put you in a room in an asylum and threw away the key, and then came back having found the key 72 hours later to see if you were still alive? And if someone is struggling with this and they're listening to us now, yeah, go to your GP, but we can't say with any certainty what your GP will suggest.
But then certain cosmetic surgeries get priority if it's deemed to be psychologically affecting you.
A lot of that depends on where you live. I had an ex-partner who had MS, and living in one area of the country you get nothing. In another area of the country you get certain things on the NHS that otherwise you'd have to pay for privately. Depends on where you are.
Isn't
depends
it
on
so
the rating.
unfair, isn't it?
Postcode lotteries, they call it.
And we have to try and transcend that when we're talking about addiction, because we have to talk about places that we can get anybody into. And part of what Amos Next Door does is finding people somewhere.
To fit either the cost, or if they've got no finance, so places like where they can get supported living and maybe get a few little groups and stuff like that.
My initial experience with trying to go through the NHS over alcohol, and this was 20-something years ago, when there were more things on offer, was that actually, even though there were things on offer, my GP's first response was to try and fob me off. Because, oh, he's young, he's just playing a bit hard. It was to try and fob me off as if, no, I don't really need to do anything with you. And I bet that's happening more and more now.
Well, there's still that stigma, isn't there? I mean, like, even though it's classed as a disease now and an illness, There's still that stigma that's self-inflicted.
I think also with the stigma, you also got a kind of thing like with most illnesses, there's a process they go through. You know, Public Health England, isn't it? So we've got to kind of rule out this, and then you've got to look at that, and then you've got to go and see this person and that person. And it's such a process. And along with alcoholism or the substances, where you've got to kind of see, like, is this person, as they say in that big blue book kind of thing, is he an alcoholic of our time?
Our time, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's another
Maybe
thing.
not trying to fob you off, just maybe seeing like, is there a few little other things we can do before you start accessing and taking resources like up in the system, you know, because it's all structured, isn't it? And sometimes I'm looking at the structure and I'm thinking, it's wrong, because I know what's wrong with me, and I'm telling you what's wrong with me. But in Bedfordshire, there used to be a kind of thing like you talk about. It used to be straight into the asylum, if you go back to the model. So if you wanted a detox, it was done in a mental health, like that was it. It weren't done in a care. So you've got to go into a psychiatric unit with people with all different layers of mental health issues. Yeah, you know, I just want a detox. Maybe you can know how recovery works a little bit. So I want a detox, and then I'm going to go back into recovery. But you've got to go into this mental. That's all they had to offer.
Do you think that's
lucky.
indicative of the fact that they don't really know what to do with alcoholics and addicts, and that they've found this kind of square peg in a round hole thing of thinking, well, we've got to detox them, but we can't put them in ordinary hospital. What about putting them in psych wards? It also indicates to me that there's not enough communication between GPs as the gatekeepers and places like us.
There's not enough communication, but also with that, like you said, healthcare postcode lottery, what is the resources of that particular healthcare? Because what I saw when they formulated Public Health England, like, and then the structure around how they was going to like finance treatment centres and all that stuff, because when I've spoken to people 20, 25, if you went to your drug and alcohol service and you kind of said, look, I'm exhausted, I can't do this no more, I need treatment. People were going in and out of treatment centres like 15 times in 1 year. It was ridiculous. And then like you got to turn around, like, you know, they got to say, well, look, what's going on there? Because we're paying X amount of thousands times a go for this person. They've got to say, well, like the treatment centre is a business, and like even though like they might not pay all the money for the 3 months of treatment, if it's 3 months of treatment, they might say, well, we'll pay it monthly. But that person might leave after 2, 3, 4 days, and they've paid a month's worth of, which could have went to some. It's just money in the treatment centre's pocket now. Like, you know, for somebody who ain't getting treatment no more. Sometimes the treatment centres would say, no, we want half the money up the front, like, for the 3 months. And then they still leave within 2, 3, 4 days. They run out. No, I can't do this. So that balance is nigh on impossible, because there's so much money was going to waste.
But do you not think that there ought to be some kind of unilateral system in place for what GPs and their practices do for people who present with flat out alcoholism or addiction?
Most definitely. And
I mean, assuming I know what you meant by that, I think there definitely should be.
most definitely.
You know, a system like right, this is what happens when somebody comes in and says, this is what's going on for me, then there should be
and therefore there ought to
a
be
step.
a schematic whereby there comes a point where they talk to rehabs, but that it's not immediate.
Yeah.
Well,
CGL now
that's the middle
aren't
ground.
like what they used to be. What you go there and you have to show them by coming back over and over and over again 5-6 weeks before they will get funding for you to go into treatment.
That's in certain areas still.
But
there's certain areas
how hard is that though?
Yeah,
to get
to stay committed to that.
And by the time you've got that commitment, what time have you done? You might think, not knowing about the disease, think, oh, I've got a hold of this. Oh, maybe I don't need to go. I've just done 5 weeks, not knowing the nature of the disease itself, which you'd learn when you do get into the treatment.
But the other thing is, like, isn't that almost like some people might not make it back at all?
It's what Neil said. It's absolutely impossible to gauge it. And what on earth do you do? But locking them up in a psych ward, maybe that is an option for some of them, because there's a lot of people that are taking these drugs and drinking themselves to death.
And going into psychosis and things, and presenting themselves in A&E with state of,
Although at
insane.
the moment, with the way things are in mental health, there won't be any beds.
No.
No, the mental.
I think maybe, and it's just kind of dawned on me now, I've never really thought of it like this before, maybe like NHS should have like their own kind of treatment centres. So it's funded
Well, if you
in a
think,
way.
okay, we're talking about pie in the sky here, but if you did, and you were funding a bed in an addiction ward the same as you fund a bed in a medical ward, what you were describing, Neil, about them paying all the money up front and it disappearing because the person leaves after 2 days, it wouldn't happen because they get funded on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We've got X number of beds in this ward,
And that's it, yeah.
and then when they admit someone, bang, that money's being spent. But when they discharge them, someone else moves in. Very cost effective.
And let alone the reduction in the amount of hospitalisations because of drinking and taking drugs.
Because if you did that, you could then, like you mentioned, the progressive model, Ronnie, if they were admitted, you can then stage an initial intervention while they're in situ in the hospital, and then you might even, if you could find a room, start running a day group with people while they're still on detox.
It sounds like it's just crazy, isn't it? That we're addicts and alcoholics are left to fend for themselves. You take care of yourselves, you get yourselves better, you do, help each other. And I think, are they looking at that possibly is working, so they're actually doing that?
They actually are. That was part of the premise, like when public health thing, they came in and they saw that social enterprise and this stuff. So here what we're going to do is, we don't mind giving you a nice little chunk of money to get going, but then we want you self-supporting. Right, yeah? And then we want you to take over this, like Richard said, where would I be without changes? So like, we want you to start looking after, like, taking in these little bits of people and you sort that out, but we don't mind giving you but it's still a lot cheaper than, this social enterprise word was, they love it. What it means is social enterprise. We're just cheap. We want it cheap.
Yeah, we want it on the cheap. Yeah. We want you to provide a public service, but to do it for a shoestring. So it costs us nothing. Yeah. So do our job for us, please.
Right, but they'll give you a check.
AA a victim of you might need to delete this, but is AA a victim of its own success? Yeah, they seem to be doing all right.
There is a problematic part to this though, because with people going into some form of treatment, whether it's they do it with an organisation like Changes or whether they go and live in a dry house environment that isn't as an inpatient as it were, they don't do it in the one house over X number of weeks. After that, it is very much either you do it with AA, NA, CA, or you don't. And there are thousands and tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who come out of a treatment scenario, whatever it may be, and it's sink or swim around the rooms, and most of them get lost. And yeah, AA is to a degree a victim of its own success in that it functions entirely independently without any funding from anywhere else. And therefore a lot of other organisations just think, oh, well, it's there, it's always been there, it works for people who keep at it. It therefore becomes an easy thing for a GP to say, well, why don't you go to AA?
That's it. I have it. Why didn't you go to them?
But what we need is this clear scheme, a clear schematic for people of saying, well, if you do this, then this, then this, then this, and then you start going to AA regularly when you had it.
That's exactly what, and that's what I went
and that is what's missing more than anything else.
That little being taken out of society for me for 8 weeks, whatever it was, I needed that.
Oh yeah,
I needed that.
Yeah, I remember.
I was like, what on earth is going on? I didn't know how to live without drink or drugs. I never did live without drink or drugs. From 14, I picked up a spliff. Until 2 years ago, I stopped taking something or drinking something, and it's like, bloody hell. I mean, you imagine being pissed on a night out, and you look back and you think, I can't remember that. Well, that's practically my whole life. And going into that treatment centre, it felt very safe, and I trusted the people that was telling me about what's the correct way to live and what's not the correct way to live, because I didn't know anything else. Fortunately for me, that they seemed to know what they were talking about, and I picked up, and then, as in picked up life ideas, you know what I mean, and then I continued with the rooms, and I needed the rooms as well, because without the rooms I don't know if I'd have lasted long. So you need all parts of it. But some people say you can do it without going into treatment, but for me, I needed it because I had to have a complete change in the way I lived from the second I woke up and opened my eyes to when I got back into that bed to go to sleep. I needed to learn how to function, not how to stop drinking, how to function.
I used to be very envious of these people who walk into the rooms and would do it just in the rooms. But
Kind of thing as
ultimately,
well.
it came for me. It came down to, okay, so and so did it in the rooms. So and so's managed to do it in the rooms, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I know that I can't, and I know that I need someone to hold me up for a few weeks before I can even begin to engage with that. And I have to accept that, because otherwise I'm going to be one of those people that jumps into the rooms and falls flat on my face.
And cause all sorts of. For me, again, it would have been like behaviours and stuff, like the way I talked to people, I spoke, the way I thought about them, and all that kind of stuff. All that was
And yet again, if we go back to this, it talks about us with our fine-tuned state of mind. So all them complexities what come with that, people different stages, different places. Some people have got a very fine-tuned state of mind, but yet still need holding up, Richard. That initial month or so, just take off a few of the edges, and then I can start coming through the rooms. Some people just come into the rooms, still got a lot of rough edges, still got to kind of do the 9 to 5, still got to kind of maybe keep the 2.4 children happy and the boss happy and get the house bills paid, and they still, you know, it's different bags. We come with the different kind of mindsets, and I think this is where everyone can get it. You know, some people kind of say, well, say you knew my mum kind of thing. My mum was like, Ronnie done it. So like, you know, Ronnie's doing really well at the moment. What, you and Ronnie wanted to your first meeting together, and all of a sudden you're drinking it. Why, Ronnie's not? Why can't you do what Ronnie's doing?
I had that problem with when I was younger, you know. They used to think, well, Ronnie seems to be doing all right. My friends hated me by the time I'd met the parents.
There you go.
That was a blagger. I was a blagger.
You was a blagger. All the parents thought you was like the sweet one. Look at Ronnie. Why aren't you more like Ronnie? That kind of thing.
I was the one that got him on the fucking drink.
And
the pills and the ecstasy.
and these so-called normal aliens, when they're looking at us and they're thinking, what is wrong with you people? Like, you know, can't you just plainly see, like, this stuff ain't working for you, like, you need to stop doing it. And we're like, no, we're alright. I'm alright over here. I heard someone do a shit yesterday, 17, going, you know, a young lady being put into prison for 3.5 years. She said, I got there and I was alright with prison because I felt like I fitted in.
Well, I didn't see you. I didn't see you.
Yeah.
Was you there?
Yeah.
She was brilliant.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? And she put all that step one stuff out there.
She was cracking,
The
mate.
consequences, and not being able to. They're blatant for a normal alien looking from the outside. Can't you see? You need to stop. Maybe you need to stop drinking. No, what are you talking about? I'm alright.
What? You mad?
Yeah.
I'm alright.
And then, like, some other people can see it a lot more clearer, but might not be able to stop.
Don't forget what the nature of the beast that we're dealing with, and maybe they're scared because then it becomes regulated. And this one keeps failing, and the NHS are doing this, and they're not doing a very good job because this one failed, this one's failed, and then the whole of the country is like, we're wasting our money on this section of the NHS because they look 80% of them are failing. Shut it down.
Well, that's what it comes down to, the bottom line, isn't it? Because it's still a business at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
Everything's still a business.
This is it, isn't it? It's,
Well,
don't
before
talk
we
to-
get into the
Pfizer.
the reality is that if people are going to get into recovery, they have to be helped into recovery. No matter how much I want to get into recovery, the state I was in, I wasn't going to do it without someone pulling me along.
Someone needs to plant a seed, even at the
You've
very
got to have
least.
a seed planted, even when you're still off your face. I spoke to someone last night who came through a form of treatment, got clean and sober, relapsed, and what we were talking about last night was how that relapse made step one mean what it was meant to mean.
Yeah.
It was as if the initial step one from the treatment before was just theoretical, and that even though all the evidence was there, the person couldn't quite see it and feel it, whereas having that relapse meant that they could. And that happens to a lot of people, and that's why we have to have these guiding hands ongoing.
Yeah.
And that's why AA and NA and CA and so on always need to be there. But what worries me about the treatment process and the recovery process in this country, I mean, I'm only going to speak about this country, I don't want to theorise about elsewhere, is that it's assumed now that most of the load in dealing with addicts and alcoholics is going to be covered by the third sector.
Yeah.
It's assumed that organisations like Changes will pick up what the NHS isn't doing. It's assumed that apart from the few private places that cost a fortune, there will be rehabs that are run as charities.
Yeah.
Which provide either cut price treatment or free places services in terms of dry house accommodation. It worries me that that's taken as read, as if no, we don't need to provide anything socially because we've got these rehabs all over the country.
And a lot of people, like, I think if a lot of people really knew how a lot of rehabs were earning their money, I think there'd be a lot more uproar, to be honest. A lot of people just kind of think like it's funded by the private individual. A lot of these, what I kind of call more economically priced treatment centres, I think they'd been shock horror how it's kind of all come around. But it comes back round to what we kicked off with, like, you know, what Ronnie was talking about, how the planet is being kind of looked after, and then, like, I think it reflects on how we look after society as well. It all kind of goes hand in hand, this kind of thing of that. Until you're suffering from it with a nearest or dearest or on a personal level, a lot of people who are dealing with the isms, the substance misuse, the addiction issues, it's like you said earlier, it's all self-inflicted. You know, when do we stop? It's a really big catch-22. So, for instance, talking about like being incarcerated, like going to prison, how much finances goes into like allocating a prisoner their first 2 weeks, like within the system, for taking them maybe a bit of cheese and bacon out of Asda or Morrison's or whatever, constantly stealing, and the judge says, well, look, you're tying my hands, I have to incarcerate you. But yet the amount of finances will go into that for somebody who's stealing it.
The thing is, we don't have an
fund
emphasis on treatment, we have an emphasis on punishment.
Crime, yeah, punishment. Yeah.
Treatment and punishment should not be in the same methodology. And rehabilitation should not be a form of punishment. Rehabilitation should be a form of proactive work to treat the individual for what they're doing to themselves and or to other people. But we don't have that perception in this country. In this country, it's always about punishment. It's always about, oh, you're a drunk, therefore you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're stealing things from supermarkets, therefore you're wrong. A lot of the petty theft going on now isn't just addicts and alcoholics, it's also people trying to cope with the cost of living.
Yeah, that was highlighted.
And there are all sorts of factors for why people get into petty crime. And they're not as cut and dried as, oh, this is someone committing a crime. You get kids who are being bullied in such a way or harassed in such a way that they're stealing things in order to cover paying off the bully. There's all sorts of shit
Different
that's
levels.
underneath why people commit crimes. Not everyone is Don Corleone. Not everyone is
Pablo.
an out wrong 'un. And if we insist on having this punitive model, and also like someone mentioned stigma earlier on, if we still have this punitive idea of going to rehab as a punishment, going to rehab is what you do because you've done everything wrong, then we're actually sticking hurdles in front of people before they even try to recover.
Yeah.
Because you've got this thing in your head to think, right, this is actually the reason why I'm having to do this, it's all negative. Whereas the thing with rehab should be, no, actually I'm going to learn how to live differently. I'm going to do the very thing that you were describing earlier, Ronnie, which is find a new way to live. I can't do that just by going out to one AA meeting. I can't do that just by having someone come round and do a 12-step call. I can't do that by just trying not to do whatever it was I did every morning for the last 30 years. It's a transformation.
Massive, it's massive.
And a transformation should not be viewed in any way as a punishment. And that's one of the biggest things we need to get away from.
Yeah.
Right, this year's first dilemma. I think you like it. You discover your mate has been keeping compromising pictures of other people from rehab in the rooms with a view to using them for blackmail purposes. He suggests you go into business together. Do you A, tell him to bollocks and leave it there? B, tell everyone else he's a stitch-up merchant? C, tell him you want a 50-50 split and give him a list of your preferred targets? D, start collecting information on him for a dossier to give to the police? E, agree, then pre-warn his targets every time?
Well, I don't think there's an answer in there that I would choose.
Is there not?
No.
Well, it depends how my finances are at the time.
Depends how you're doing in the bank, doesn't it?
It might be onto an earner here, because I found out all I've got to do is be a silent partner. I'm just like, and tell him how much I'm expecting. Like, you've got to hit some targets here. You know about soul stuff.
KPIs.
There's not an answer there, Ronnie.
There's no correct answer there, is there?
There
Really,
is.
what you would have to do is explain to him the nature of his wrongs.
I wouldn't presume to judge in that way. I'd just tell him to bollocks.
Okay, that one then. That'll do. Bollocks.
I'm waiting for.
Yeah,
I think, Ronnie, if you go into telling him the nature of it, is it really your job to do that?
It's not.
Even though what
there
he's
isn't
doing
a
is
real, there's
appalling.
not a real. Well, that's what I'm saying. What is the correct answer for that? Because you can't. Or do you tell the people that he's got the pictures of? Look, this guy's got pictures of you. Just letting you know.
I'd take advice on that one, because actually, while it's...
Oh, that's my sponsor.
Yeah, because while you would, I suppose, conventional wisdom would say don't get involved,
Yeah.
there's also but if I don't say something here and he does start blackmailing, and I know about
That's
it,
the-
what does that make me? And that's why I picked this one, because actually you're caught between two stools, aren't you? Because if I'm living in a dry house environment and I know that someone else is drinking and I don't say anything, that means I'm colluding.
I've had this.
And it means I'm concealing things that is potentially dangerous. Yeah. And with this, if I conceal the fact that I know he's going to blackmail her or him, and I don't pass it on, I'm damaging that person for not revealing that information.
Exactly. So.
And yet, is it really my place to intervene?
Yeah, none
Like
of your
I'm
business.
playing God?
None of my business. But that's wrong as well. So it's very. So what? This is why we have a sponsor. Put the monkey on someone else's back.
Pass the buck.
Pass the buck.
Pass the buck.
Pass the buck.
I don't know what Justice Klein's got to say about this one, because you're pretty cut and dry when it comes to
Well,
things.
to be honest, I mean, in this instance, I think I'd be thinking about how I can wrap him up in chicken wire and throw him. But I'd need to get the compromising material in case he has anything on me.
Yes.
Because if he's got stuff on everyone, I can guarantee he's probably got stuff on me.
Like maybe find out if he's part of an organisation and tell his support. You know, by the
You
way,
could do that anonymously.
anonymously. Yeah, write a letter.
Yeah, it needs to be outed. But yeah, which way?
And obviously, you could do it on this programme if you wanted to. You know, do you know anyone who's blackmailing anyone? Nil? Are we going to talk about anyone blackmailing? And
The real correct.
we will expose you.
The real correct answer to that is just speak to your sponsor, isn't it? In
Yeah,
the world
absolutely.
that we're in the environment that we're in, you speak to your sponsor. If you want to follow the traditions, the steps, the principles, and all that, it's chat to your sponsor.
Yeah, inevitably, and we all have situations come up where I get them where I just think I don't know.
I don't know what to do.
I kind of feel like what I ought to do, but I can see two answers. I think I need to phone a friend.
Or you ask the man upstairs, do you say the serenity prayer?
And then whatever hits you. Yeah, just
Bang.
like that. Yeah.
50-50, take the money and then grass him up.
Spin the wheel.
Spin the lucky wheel. I'm not sure God should be advising you on your roulette habit now.
No, I'll pray first, spin the wheel, and then whatever he says, that's him in it.
Oh, is that the bit they cut out when they're filming Wheel of Fortune? Every time when he's just about, there's someone go.
That's it. Well, I did a topic meeting with, and the person who does the share, the following week he picks a number between 1 and 21. And sometimes what you get the same number like, coming up time and time again. So like we was kind of talking about dropping it a number, like if that, and then like maybe change. I said, but you're playing God here, aren't you? You know, I mean, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, kind of thing.
Yeah, but how many numbers are there?
21 numbers.
Why didn't you just take the number out?
You see, but are we playing God though?
No.
No. Just making it a new subject for next week, a new topic for next week, the following week.
Are you playing God? I don't know.
Surely not. Neil playing God.
We had one inferiority, and it kept on coming up till people was getting a bit sick of this inferiority. But there you go.
You could just say, I don't know, you're confused.
Well, is there any such thing as random?
There's
If
nothing
you can
random.
calculate everything.
Well, you know on the
About
roulettes,
throwing the
if
dice.
you do it like over 100 million times, every time it landed and put a marker, every number will come out roughly about the same to within a certain amount.
Well, yeah, roughly. But then the thing with probability theory is that you're basing it on a short-term thing initially, aren't you? So if you're spinning a roulette wheel, that will not even out over the course of the first 5,000 runs, will it? It won't even out there.
Oh, no,
But
no,
over a million.
Yeah, so it would
of
never.
course it will,
Yeah.
because probability comes down to
Over a million,
evens.
it would
if you're gonna
all
do
at
that.
least come out 500 times, but you'd have to get to quite a high number for it to have all come out.
Because if you
500
flipped a
times.
coin a million times, okay, there'd be disparities
There'd be
at some point,
yeah.
but ultimately it would probably even out.
Does that make sense?
Well, that's what I meant. Think about it, isn't it?
And the equation to infinity is divided by 2.
I've been kind of saying that a lot of times now, and like even my thinking's none of my business sometimes. None of my business, like with this dilemma.
That's just not nice, though, is it?
It's
you
not nice,
You could
it's
just say, look, that's none of my business.
Yeah. Well, not as a person to think about. Think about what you're doing. Do you think
I
you're
suppose
doing
it's
this
also
right?
the fact that blackmail is criminal.
Yeah, it's a criminal offence. What it is. To begin with, taking getting hold of the materials, he's mostly done it in some unlawful way, and then to bring a second count of.
How do you know he did it unlawfully though? They might
have posed
and done.
What about the people that haven't got a sponsor? Let's work on that basis. So you haven't got a sponsor. So what you could do is say to the guy, look, what you're doing is wrong, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to tell your superiority, or whatever you call it. I am going to have to tell them that this is what you're going to do.
Well, or the other answer is just tell Chuck Norris.
Who's
then
this
it would just be resolved, wouldn't it?
Who's this Chuck?
Just like that.
So
Ask Chuck.
All I know about this Chuck Norris, he can do a karate chop and that karate chop to remove
No,
a
he can
hair
do a spin.
on.
Time goes backwards when he does a roundhouse kick.
You know, like when Superman went round,
Superman went round
round
the
and round,
world.
and got the world spinning back to turn back time. That's what happens when Chuck Norris does it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like-
so fast you never see it.
and the world just stops spinning for a while, and he slows.
They can't even put him in slow-mo. Anyway, gentlemen, miraculously as ever, we have run out of time. And on that fine note, we will love you and leave you. If you have heard anything that has resonated with you concerning yourself, someone you know, someone you love, someone you work with, anybody that lives in your street or the next street or the caretaker's cat or whoever, then do seek help. There is plenty of it out there. And while we have been talking about discrepancies within public services and private services and rehabs and charities, there are plenty of places where you can ask for advice. The thing about having a logical progression into recovery is that sometimes you have to find the steps for yourself. And when you do find someone that's willing to guide you, grab it, wield it, and we're all still here. So have a wonderful week, and we'll be back next week. So it's good night from me.
Good night, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Take care.